locked up. So, Gift Storm on your left, Jund Death Shadow on your right. We will be underway here in a moment. And it looks like Sasser will be starting things off here with a Polluted Delta. That will be searching up a Steam Vents.
And why do I think this matchup is good for Jund Death Shadow? They got the right mixture of cards. You have a couple removal spells to handle the accelerators. You have a fast clock, a ton of discard spells, very little in the way of dead weight, and the deck is extremely mana efficient.
There'll be a Serum Visions here for Sasser. He'll draw a card because he's fallen down to 17. Pyretic Ritual and Island, the cards that Sasser is choosing between on the scry here as he consults his hand. You can see that there's a Grape Shot in there, among other things. So he's going to leave them both on top. We'll head back over to Hobbs. Hobbs will draw a card. We do expect this to be a pretty good matchup here for Hobbs. He's got a lot of discard and a fairly quick clock as well. He'll start things off with a Bauble, targeting himself, get an idea of what he's working with.
You want to bobble yourself in that spot if you have a fetch land and a non-fetchable land. If you like your top card, you don't shuffle. And if you want to get rid of it, then you use your fetch land.
He'll bobble Sasser as well. See exactly what Sasser kept on top. Now it's a Nurturing Peatland. Hobbs will fall down to 19 and fire off an Inquisition of Kozilek. You'll see a hand here of Baral, Chief of Compliance. Gifts Ungiven, Grape Shot, Pyretic Ritual, a Mountain, and another copy of Scalding Tarn.
Another subtle little value there with the Mistress Bauble. You get to look at the top card of the opposing deck and allow that to inform which card you would like to take with your discard spell.
So, Hobbs will think a little while before making a selection here. Of course, you cannot take Gifts Ungiven, but everything else is eligible in this situation. And Hobbs will draw a couple of cards from those baubles. So we head back over to Sasser, who's drawn a copy of Pyretic Ritual. That, of course, Hobbs knows about. Baral was the selection with the discard spell, so we'll head back over to John here in just a moment. Knowing that he has to not play around much of anything right now, he knows exactly what's going on in Drake Sasser's hand. You see there's a Tarfire in Hobbs' hand, among other things at the moment.
Doing a little card type count, it looks like.
Yep, for perhaps Tarmogoyf, or of course, Traverse the Uvenwald and its Delirium. There'll be a Blood Crypt here off the fetch. Hobbs is going to fall down to 16. We'll see where we do go next. And now it's a Tarfire. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, love it.
Talk to me.
Taking me back. Goblin Shock. Delirium enabled, so many synergies. The Bauble, just it's all of it. It's all of it.
Tarfire myself.
He's actually over one. He's showing off.
Yep, Traverse. There we go. What a beautiful thing. Looking to get Death Shadow online and get a quick clock out here. Now, I did watch a match earlier where Drake Sasser played against a Grixis Death Shadow opponent where they did deploy 2 copies of Death Shadow very early, and Sasser was actually able to Grape Shot them both away. Hopefully for Jonathan Hobbs, that does not happen here, as he's going to now play a Bauble.
Let's scope out some more action.
It looks like he's going to wait for the moment.
Yeah, no, you're not getting a lot of information when Sasser's sitting there on the Scalding Tarn, and if you're tapped out, you can't do anything with the draw step right away. So you might as well wait, and maybe Sasser will sacrifice his Scalding Tarn in the intervening moment, and you can know what the top card is. I would love to teach a course on Mishra's Bauble, interactions, and heuristics. I love talking about it.
Okay. So that's what you want to do, man. Here's a couple copies of Death Shadow.
Really weird to play him like that when you're playing against Remand. You might want to do just one of the, I mean, you know, he's got cards he can play in response, you know.
He could make
it's okay. It's okay.
Sasser's going to search up an island here off the Scalding Tarn. You know, the thing is, the Hobbs knows he doesn't have it. He's got him red.
Right.
Book. This is a Pyretic Ritual. That is a Gifts Ungiven. That's going to resolve. So Sasser is going to dig 4 cards out of his deck. And it looks like Pyretic Ritual will be one. Perhaps Desperate Ritual will be the next one, along with the Past in Flames and something else. So Drake putting a priority on resolving the very powerful 4-mana instant. There's the Desperate Ritual. Now, what will the last piece to the puzzle be here? Drake, it looks like it's going to be Baral, Chief of Compliance. Well, it looks like maybe he's thinking Manamorphose instead. So a couple of different options here for our Gift Storm player. Of course, this version is based around Gifts Ungiven as you're seeing it resolve. There are other versions that are based around the card Twiddle and various takes on Twiddle. So even though we don't see that deck a ton anymore, we are cognizant that it does exist in the modern format. Drake now maybe thinking now Echoing Truth. Well, perhaps not. A little unsure of himself, but at the end of the day, he'll settle with 2 rituals, Manamorphose and Past in Flames, a standard search for a Gift Storm player.
Yeah, I don't think you can really split it up in the way, you know, you get 1 Echoing Truth in this sort of spot, because Hobbs just only gives you that card if he doesn't care, and he doesn't care some amount of the time. So with the Gifts Ungiven, even if you really want to do, you want to get a certain flexible card, unless you're going off via Past in Flames, you're best served just getting a homogenous mix of things to leave your opponent with no good options.
Well, we'll see how Hobbs wants to split them. Hobbs says your rituals are going to go to the graveyard. You get to keep a Manamorphose and a Past in Flames. And now Drake will untap and take his 4th turn of the game. Can Drake make anything happen right now? I would say that Hobbs' shields are pretty close to down. Drake will now play a Pyretic Ritual, so he's got 3 red mana floating. Our mana counters are probably on the way here, as Drake would like to maybe try to go off here in just a moment. You see 3 red mana floating, and there will be 1 spell being played once we get our Caleb Share Storm counter out. Of course, Caleb winning the right to have a Storm counter made after winning an invitational here on the SCG Tour a handful of years ago. Desperate Ritual is going to bring Sasser up to 4 red. Manamorphose will give him some amount of blue mana here, perhaps. Looks like he'll do a 2-2 split and draw a card. Now he has both copies of Past in Flames in hand, so there's no mana floating anymore for Drake Sasser. But he's got access to his entire graveyard, so he'll start with a Pyretic Ritual. That'll be 3 red.
And he does he have Manamorphose?
Manamorphose is in the graveyard, yes.
So he can launder into blue, and then it shouldn't be too hard to win from this spot.
The only thing he's really missing from this spot is a remand for the Grape Shot.
But he can make so much mana that he can just probably even Gifts again and just get a second Grape Shot. Or
it's possible. No cost reducer right now, so I think he's making a pretty healthy amount of mana, but nothing absurd. Let's here's 3 red and 2 blue. He'll draw a card.
I mean, I think he can just cast the rituals and cantrips in his graveyard and Grape Shot. Remember, Hobbs has done a lot of damage to himself.
Yeah, Hobbs is only at 12 as opposed to 20. That's a very fair point. And Hobbs is going to concede the game because Sasser already has the Grape Shot. So Drake Sasser is going to win game number 1 here over Jonathan Hobbs. Gift Storm very quickly up a game here over Jun Death Shadow. Hobbs is already going to his sideboard, so we will do the same. 4 Collective Brutality is a great place to start, along with 3 Alpine Moons, 2 Veil of Summer, 2 Fulminator Mage, and 4 1-ofs in Liliana of the Veil, Plague Engineer, Collector Oof, and Kolaghan's Command.
So I really like the Liliana of the Veil this matchup. If you can resolve that, you can both attack the accelerators and just start working down Sasser's hand. The Collective Brutalities are a little modest in this matchup. You really aren't paying for very much besides the discard spell for 2 mana, but I still think it's an improvement over other things in the main deck. More discard to back up your threats and try to keep Sasser off balance long enough to allow those threats to carry the game.
We'll take a look at Sasser's sideboard now with his 4 Aria of Flame. Of course, that card's from Modern Horizons, was making a pretty big impact in Storm a little bit earlier this year, along with 2 Mystical Dispute, 2 Abrade, 2 Empty the Warrens, 2 Blood Moon, 2 Lightning Bolts, and a Leyline of Sanctity. I
really like the Empty the Warrens in this matchup. A Sea of Trump Blockers is really good here, and if Hobbs is doing a lot of the work for you, by dealing damage to himself. A short Empty the Warrens can win the game. You know, I could be, if you thought your graveyard might be in some amount of risk, I could see bringing in Aria of Flame. I think Blood Moon is acceptable in this matchup. It's disruptive enough. The one ley line of Sanctity against discard spells is an option as well.
Well, those are the options there for both players. Game number 2 will be underway here in just a moment. Jonathan Hobbs has the option to player draw. I'm sure he'll be selecting to play first here momentarily. But while these players find the configurations they'd like for game number 2, we want to talk about the number 2, as in 2020, coming to you very soon. Season 1 of the SCG Tour was announced a couple weeks ago here on the Star City Games, and if you're looking to play some Magic with us in 2020, we'd love to have you starting in Columbus for a Team Modern Open, and then our return to Knoxville for some Modern.
For my money, my favorite spot in SCG Tour history. It's been a long time. We're really excited to go back. Then, these formats have not been announced yet. Star City is still holding tight on that, but as we get closer to these events, we'll be announcing. In February, we have Richmond, Philadelphia, Indianapolis, and then in March, the Regional Championship, along with Opens in Baltimore and Syracuse. After that, when we head on over to Atlanta and Worcester in April, may bring Cincinnati, Louisville, and Philadelphia once again. And that will take us to SCGCon Summer, featuring the Star City Games Invitational. That will be in Roanoke, Virginia, June 11th through the 14th.
Play mats and all the other good stuff will be announced a little bit later on this year, so keep your eyes peeled at go.starcitygames.com/schedule. Make some plans to join us in Season 1 of the 2020 SCG Tour. Drake Sasser and Jonathan Hobbs right now leading this tournament. Hobbs in first place, Sasser in second. Both of them 11-1. Whoever wins this match will lock up a top 8 berth and add another piece to their ever-growing resumes here on the SCG Tour. From Jund, Death Shadow, and Giftstorm, some old-school decks that are making a return, which is certainly nice to see.
Yeah, it's something. There's something to having Modern be this really deep card pool, and every once in a while, these decks that have been pushed out of the metagame for various reasons have an opportunity to come back. Not that they're pushed out because they aren't powerful enough, but just because the circumstances, the way they interact, isn't appropriate right now. But I think we've reached a point here where both these decks have a place in the field right now. They are taking advantage of some of the weaknesses of the new top decks, and not surprising to see these players both at 11-1 and closing in on the top 8.
One thing I've taken away from this tournament and recent Modern tournaments is that Lightning Bolt is just not a card you see very much outside of really Burn.
And very little in the way of Fatal Push as well.
Yeah. So we'll see how Thoughts League has kicked things off here for Jonathan Hobbs. Past in Flames opt, Serum Visions, and a handful of lands. A couple copies of Spirebluff Canal, along with the Scalding Tarn and an island.
Say, very weak opening setup in here from Sasser. I think in this sort of matchup, you can be talked into keeping a lot of modest hands because there's so much discard. That looks like right on the edge of a mulligan.
Yeah. We'll be heading back over to Sasser now for his first turn of the game. He lost his Serum Visions. He'll play a Scalding Tarn and pass the turn back over to Hobbs. Hobbs down a game currently. Couldn't really get anything going with those Death Shadows. Got Grape Shotted out. Another copy of Nurturing Peatland and just a passing return now. Looks like Hobbs is sideboard in Plague Engineer to cover himself a little bit against Empty the Warren.
Yeah, gotta respect that possibility. I think it's a really sharp sideboarding plan against them because, you know, you're going after your hand. It's hard to set up these storms for 18 or 20 spells where even you do a Grape Shot. But Empty the Warrens, an empty for 10 or 12 goblins can often be enough. The mixture of chump blocking and the fact that the Death Shadow deck is dealing so much damage to itself means you can close out the game that way.
It'll be an opt here from Sasser. He'll keep that card with the Scry 1, and now he'll draw a mystery card for his turn. It'll be a Spirebuff Canal, just a passing of the turn. So Hobbs is going to deal himself 2 points of damage because he's looking to get his life total underneath 13 so he can deploy some Death Shadows. So down to 15 he goes. The draw step for the turn appears to be a Liliana of the Veil.
a real prize in this matchup. Typically, though, Hobbs knows that Sasser has a lot of extra lands to work with. His hand was not very good when it was exposed by that initial Thoughtseize. Wouldn't surprise me if he took a different route this turn if something better is going on, because he knows he's not going to get a premium card for at least 2 turns.
This is Death Shadow. That's a Death Shadow. And Hobbs is down to 11. Just another Spire Buff Canal here from Sasser. And now here is, oh boy, Dismember. That's going to bring him down to 7. And 13 minus 7 is 6. So that means that his Death Shadow doesn't die. That means that we got a really quick clock here. But what this also means is that Hobbs is opening himself up to potentially getting killed by a Grape Shot. There's no guarantee Sasser gets another turn, though, because Hobbs can bring himself down to 5 quite easily. 13 minus 5 is 8, so he can attack for 16 this turn. Will he deal himself damage? Looks like he's going to take at least 1. Perhaps a Team or Battle Rage is on the way? It's going to be a Gorkland Rampager.
This is very lethal.
13 minus 6 is 7, 14. I count 18, if my math is correct. So now that would be 19. That assumes that Sasser has nothing.
I mean, if he's got an Echoing, if he's got 5 points of burn, doesn't look like it.
That's so dead. Make a move with the Gorkland Rampager is what John Hobbs is going to do. And he's going to win this second game. So Jund Death Shadow and Gift Storm all tied up. This game's a little bit strange, but effective. So pretty straightforward stuff there for both players in these initial games, I must say.
So a lot of pressure on Hobbs, though, to shorten up the length of the game here, because unlike the Grixis builds, he can't interact very easily with spells on the stack. He can do some good work with the discard spells up front, but he's got to shorten the length of the game, was able to do that in game number 2.
Well, game number 3 will be underway here in just a moment, but first, a few words from our sponsors. Game number 3 will be underway here in just a moment between Drake Sasser and Jonathan Hobbs. Hobbs is taking a step away at the moment to get ready for our third and final game. But one thing we do want to show you very quickly is what these players are playing for. So we'll take a look at our prize slide here in just a moment, because whoever wins this match is going to lock up a top 8 berth, and there's a lot that is involved with that, like locking up at least $500, 15 SCG points, and an invitational qualification, along with an Arcbound Ravager promo card that has been gifted to us from our friends over at Wizards of the Coast. But as we make our way into those elimination rounds, more cash is, of course, on the line, more SCG points for those looking to qualify for the Players' Championship or earn some buys from the SCG Tour, and Players Tour qualifications as well. Once again, gifted to us from our friends over at Wizards of the Coast. So before, Patrick, it was about the money, the points, and the invitational qualification. Now there's even more here on the SCG Tour.
Oh, there's a ton. The Players Tour qualification, really valuable piece of the relatively new organized play program that Wizards of the Coast rolled out earlier this year. Arcbound Ravager promo cards. The history of these promo cards is that they appreciate pretty well.
They do.
Stuff that one away, or play with it if you're the affinity type. And of course, the SCG points and invitational qualifiers qualification, very valuable for trying to get to the Players Championship, among other things.
So you see, that's what these players are playing for, and you can learn more information at go.starcitygames.com/opens, of course, to see exactly how our opens do work here on the SCG Tour. And now young Johnny Hobbs is back. We're ready to do battle and see if he can win this match and put another top 8 onto his resume. But I think a member of Team Nova here in Drake Sasser may have something to do about that. But I will say, Sasser being on the play here in Game 3, that does matter. Yeah,
it's a very play-draw dependent matchup. You know, the games where Jun's on the play, they get to open on discard spell and a threat often before the Gift Storm player has anything to show for it. A lot harder to do that while you're on the draw. The value of remand changes quite a bit, play versus draw, so it matters. It's a big, big part of the matchup.
No, we shall see here, folks. You know, it should hopefully be a very good third game between two of the SCG Tour's best this year, number 11 and number 13 respectively, on our SCG Tour Player of the Year leaderboard, which is currently being led by one Harlan Fear, who I don't think we'll see in the elimination rounds, but not a bad tournament nonetheless.
Now, he did his work a few months ago, kind of ahead of schedule with the Urza stuff. Deck has evolved quite a bit since then, but he was putting up very good finishes during the Hogak summer and has continued to do so, but not this weekend.
Can't win them all.
No.
Or at least that's what they say.
What I've been told.
Win some, lose
most.
There it is. Looks like Sasser's going to send his hand back while Hobbs is giving his a bit of a shuffle and perhaps thinking a scotch. So for Drake Sasser, this would be another top 8 for him. We met him really last year when he won our Legacy Open in Worcester with Grixis Delver running over Elves in the finals. And since then, we've seen Drake with quite a few near misses in the top 8 and a couple top 8s as well. But he's been very adamant about playing Storm in Modern. Was actually a very big proponent of Pyromancer Ascension. It looks like he's gotten away from that recently.
Should be on the verge of a top 8 here, even with a loss here. Take a lot for him to miss top 8 from this position.
Well, that's a steam fence. It'll enter the battlefield untapped, and we're going to head back over to Jonathan Hobbs.
So much of this is about the early sequencing from Hobbs' side, trying to maximize every look at a top card. Conceal as much information as possible.
And bring yourself low, but not too low, and get grape shotted out like you did in the first game.
Empty the warrants a consideration post-board as well.
Yeah, here is Inquisition of Kozilek, as Hobbs is already down to 15. Pyretic Ritual, Desperate Ritual, Manamorphose, Opt, and a Steam Vents is what Drake Sasser is working with. So Hobbs will take some notes before making his selection with the discard spell. Again, Hobbs has only lost in this tournament, which is the player who's in third place and was our only other undefeated player coming in to day number 2 of competition. That was Dominic Harvey, so chances of seeing them both in the top 8 and Drake actually rather high. Opt is the selection here from Hobbs as we head back to Sasser for his second turn. Thinking about playing a Steam Fence untapped. He's actually going to play it untapped. Pardon me, I thought he was going to play it tapped. But he'll play a Manamorphose now. This is a little bit interesting. He'll draw a card. Because I don't need those counters. Got nothing doing. And unfortunately for him, his draw looked like it was Leyline of Sanctity.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what was up with that play. If he had a ritual in hand, I suspect he was digging for Blood Moon.
2 rituals in hand.
2 rituals in hand. Digging for Blood Moon.
Also, there's the off chance that he was trying to spike and empty the Warrens because he just chose Manamorphose. Ritual
Moon, yep.
Yeah. Now, does that beat a Tarmogoyf? Maybe yes, maybe no. That is a 5/6 Tarmogoyf, so that's a real clock. And that's the kind of clock there where Hobbs' life total does not work itself into the equation. He doesn't have to ding himself a bunch with Nurturing Peatlands if they showed up to turn on Death Shadow. He can just come across here with the Lurgoyf for a handful of attacks. We're going to head back over to Hobbs now. He'll start off with an Inquisition of Kozilek once again, his second of the game. There are those rituals that we saw earlier in the Desperate and Pyretic variety, along with the Leyline and Baral.
Hobbs made a little bit of a face. Leyline, huh? A little late to the party.
You betcha. There's a real opportunity cost with that card. Great in the opener, and maybe the worst card you can draw over the course of the game. As there goes the Desperate Ritual. Better to take out the one with Splice on it than the one without. Is now cycling a Street Wraith. Pardon me. It's going to bring Hobbs down to 13. Here comes Tarmogoyf for 5. Sasser down to 11. Fatal Push at the ready here for Hobbs. He's also got a copy of Thoughtseize. Looks like he might be deploying a snow-covered swamp, and he will to play that Thoughtseize. So I think a good thought process here of, let me rip apart these rituals. I can beat a cost reducer. I've already got a Fatal Push in hand, and then just run you over. There's an island.
Right. I mean, Sasser's not drawing to anything threatening next turn to pair along with a reducer. And if he just plays a reducer on the battlefield to try to set up for a following turn, Hobbs is ready with Fatal Push.
So Sasser passes the turn back, and now it's another discard spell here from Hobbs. There goes Baral. Leyline is all that's left over. Here comes Tarmogoyf. Sasser's down to 6. Death Shadow is the follow-up. It's not a big one, but it doesn't need to be. As Sasser will draw, he'll play Manamorphose. He'll draw a copy of Sleight of Hand. Not sure this actually gets him anywhere, folks, as he'll get to pick a card from this and extend the hand. Jonathan Hobbs going to win this game and match here over Drake Sasser, 2-1. Jun Death Shadow will take care of Giftstorm, and for the young man, an Indiana native, he is 12-1, and he has locked up another top 8. Congratulations to him.
Yep, very strong matchup, I think, for Hobbs. You know, things can go wrong, as we saw in the first game. You do have to have the right blend of stuff, but the Jun Death Shadow deck is pretty homogeneous.